The religion of the future will be universal in every sense. It will embody all the thoughts and aspirations and virtues and emotions of all humanity. It will draw together all lands and peoples and kindreds and tongues into a universal brotherhood of love and service. It will establish upon earth a heavenly order. And so this is where things get really interesting, because the approach was that this coming together of religions would facilitate a coming together of politics as well.
By their fruits you shall know them.
All right, welcome to By Their Fruits. I am your host, Jeremy Stone. I'm with my co-host, John. What's up, John?
Nothing too much, Jeremy. Doing well as I possibly can in this hot summer. Hope you're still staying cool as much as you possibly can, brother. And hope everybody out there who's listening is staying as cool as they possibly can. And thank the Lord every day for the modern convenience of air conditioning, because we don't know how long we're going to be having it. And it is a blessing to have it during this time period. So, yes. So hope everybody's doing well out there. God bless each and every one of you.
You can run it as long as you want right now, but sometime in the near future, they're going to monitor that and shut it off on you.
Yes, or they're already working towards it. And they're so. But anyway, would you like to introduce today's guest, Jeremy?
Absolutely, yeah. Today we have a special guest. It's a good friend of ours and an awesome brother in Christ. His name is Teichrib, and he's a Christian author. He's a researcher. He knows all the big groups and names, and it's just an honor to have him on. How you doing, Carl?
Hey, I'm doing good. Doing really good. Looking forward to the interview.
Absolutely. Do you want to give the audience a little background about yourself and who you are, what you do?
Yeah, sure. Contrary to John or yourself, it's not super hot where I am. I'm in the Canadian prairies, and right now I think our temperature would be 59 degrees. Your temperature, Fahrenheit, 15 degrees or 16 degrees Celsius. So it's a cooler kind of day. But yeah, I'm a Canadian-based researcher and author. I'm the author of the book Game of Gods: The Temple of Man in the Age of Reenchantment, and I've been researching and writing on globalization, well, full-time since 1997, and going all the way back into the mid-1990s. I think the first articles I started to pump out was back in 1995 on this subject. So, I kind of cover a lot of bases. In many ways, I stand at the crossroads between where global politics, spirituality, culture, and even technology can intersect.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, you are, in my opinion, you're an expert on globalization, and that's something that John and I are very, very familiar with. And the topic today goes hand in hand with that, which I don't think many people realize how interconnected it really is. And we're going to be talking about the interfaith movement, and which is essentially ecumenicalism, and how that connects to the globalization of the world and the New World Order. So you can start wherever you'd like to, and we'll hop in when we get the chance.
Okay. Yeah, cool. What's interesting with the interfaith movement is it's a movement that in many respects is outside of mainstream Christians' target or vision. When you talk about it, I oftentimes, people's eyes kind of glaze over, like, what in the world are you talking about? But what it is it's a broad movement that looks to say religions, doesn't matter what faith you are, doesn't matter if you're a Baha'i or a Hindu or a Christian by whatever stripe, or a Muslim, you can come together as long as you're coming together for world peace, for the oneness of everything. You're coming together for the green movement. You're coming together for social justice. And so it forms itself into a type of spiritual politics where faith leaders, religious leaders end up becoming the moral statesmen, our unofficial statesmen, who now will be pushing a global political, social, and really a new religious agenda out into the cultural space. In many respects, the interfaith movement is what birthed globalization in a serious way. It begins in 1893 at the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago, the very first parliament, which was a part of the Columbian Exposition. And while the Columbian Exposition was like the show, it was the global show in terms of trade and industry and commerce. It drew to itself many faith leaders. I believe up to 8,000 religious leaders, pastors, theologians came together for the very first Parliament of World Religions. And so there they fleshed out what kind of what this new brotherhood should look like. There was a lot of talk about a coming age of plenty, a coming golden age. In fact, allow me to give you a couple of quotes. This is from Charles Bonney, who was the organizer of the Parliament in 1893. He says this day, the sun of a new era of religious peace and progress rises over the world. This day, a new flower blooms in the gardens of religious thought. This day, a new fraternity is born into the world of human progress to aid in the upbuilding of the kingdom of God in the hearts of men. It is the brotherhood of religions. Another one of the speakers put it this way: the religion of the future will be universal in every sense. It will embody all the thoughts and aspirations and virtues and emotions of all humanity. It will draw together all lands and peoples and kindreds and tongues into a universal brotherhood of love and service. It will establish upon earth a heavenly order. And so this is where things get really interesting, because the approach was that this coming together of religions would facilitate a coming together of politics as well. And I mean, that was a real significant part of this movement. In fact, in many respects, the 1893 Parliament was kind of like the foundational milieu that birthed ideas of world federalism, and then later on the League of Nations. In fact, some of the same personalities were intersecting in a really big way. Back then, it energized the burgeoning social gospel movement with its idea of righteous internationalism. That was how the social gospel movement of the day talked about their mandate to build heaven on earth. And by the way, they were for the most part pro-world federalists, pro League of Nations. In fact, some of them were involved in the development of the League to Enforce Peace, which was a precursor to the League of Nations. So the 1893 Parliament is the jump-off point. This is where everything changes. In fact, it's called the tipping point, and for a good reason. It was also when the East came west. So Swami Vivekananda, who, now I keep going to the parliaments. I've been to the last 4. Every time I've been, Swami Vivekananda's remembrance is brought up. And at the 1893 Parliament, Swami Vivekananda, he was the rock star. I mean, he came from India. He showed up. What he said to the audience just wowed the crowd. So he said things like this: we believe not only in universal tolerance, but we accept all religions as true. And then this is what he said to the audience: ye are the children of God, the sharers of immortal bliss, holy and perfect beings, ye divinities on earth, sinners. It is a sin to call man so. It is a standing libel on human nature. Come up, O lions, and shake off the delusion that you are sheep. Then he said, the Christian is not to become a Hindu or a Buddhist, nor a Hindu or a Buddhist to become a Christian, but each must assimilate the spirit of the others. And doesn't that sound like now? You know?
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
It also reminds me, I have a question for you, if you don't mind. This
Sure.
guy, I don't know anything about him, but did he happen to be involved with theosophy?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, there was the connection is that there was a lot of crossover in terms of the ideas, because he was promoting Vedanta philosophy. That's what Vivekananda was really promoting. And so Vivekananda becomes massively influential. Carl Jung is influenced by him. Aldous Huxley, in a significant way, is influenced by Vivekananda. There's lots and lots of stories of Vivekananda's interactions with the social elites in England, in the United States. He traveled Europe. He went back to India. He had lots of dovetailed connections with the Theosophical Society. He's quite the character. After he left the U.S., there was Vedanta societies that popped up. I think Hollywood, Boston, Chicago, a bunch of them across the U.S. I know the one in California, the one in Hollywood, really, it kind of really set the tone. I think that was in the 1920s that one was started. I'd have to look it up again, but really kind of set the tone for California's kind of interesting blend of Eastern thinking and philosophy and practices with with Western ideals and kind of married the two together. So Vivekananda, in many respects, is the tipping point.
Yeah, I know Alice Bailey wrote in a lot of her works that one of the roadblocks to the externalization of the hierarchy, which we'll see if it happens in 2025 or not. It's ultimately up to God's will. If the false Great Awakening and if the externalization of the hierarchy happens, if it occurs. But anyway, she would write that a Bible believing Christian who prays was the greatest roadblock to the plan. And even she was aware of that. And, as we know, through the coming of ecumenicalism, through the coming kind of the infiltration of the Theosophical Society into the churches through planting world servers into the churches to initiate the masses. The same thing that happened in the first century when you had Gnostics, sitting next to, Christians in, early kind of like church houses or homes, for lack of a better word.
Right.
That was kind of like the hallmark of theosophy, was to kind of slowly subvert the churches and then steer them away from the Bible, which is God's word, to ecumenicalism and to beliefs of other scriptures or writings. You could even insert the Gnostic quote unquote gospels, for example, to try to steer them away from the Bible into things like that first, and then later to other religions.
Yes, yes. And what's interesting with the 1893 Parliament was the role that Theosophy had at that Parliament. In fact, Theosophy was. I'd have to quickly kind of just go through my notes a little bit, but okay, here we go. This is a little excerpt from chapter 6. Organizers, and speaking about the 1893 Parliament, first gave the Theosophical Society a room with seating capacity for 250 people. The public response, however, surpassed expectations. Next, a space for 1,500 was arranged, but this was likewise inadequate. Organizers had to quickly adjust by preparing a hall for 3,000 people, which was soon packed. So, the 1893 Parliament was a watershed moment, not just for the fact that the East came west, but it acted as a springboard for that theosophical worldview. And what's important to keep in mind when it comes to something like the 1893 Parliament, because there's got to be a starting point, and this really acts as that starting point. Again, it's an event that's almost unheard of within a lot of Christian, spaces. Nevertheless. What was interesting with this is roughly 80%, I think it was 78% of the speakers at that event were Protestant or Catholic or Orthodox. In fact, this was the first ecumenical event, but it was way more than just being an ecumenical event. It was an interfaith event, and it launched both the interfaith movement and the idea that the next century was going to be the century of the common man, when we would see human brotherhood come together both religiously and politically in this kind of this quasi-mystical, spiritual, political form of world federalism. Of course, the last century was anything but. It was a century of blood. It was a century of war. I mean, it wasn't that much longer after the 1893 Parliament and World War I breaks out, just a few decades later. And then you have the unleashing of industry on the battlefield, unlike anything else in human history, with 7,000 men dying per day for 4 years. I mean, it was a slaughterhouse, and that just set the tone for the rest of the 20th century. So much for their vision of utopia and world peace and the world coming together. But in many respects, I mean, this is, there's got to be groundwork that's laid. There's got to be a foundation that's put in place, and the Parliament acted that way. It took 100 years for the next Parliament to come into the picture. 1993 was the next Parliament, ironically or not ironically, back in Chicago, and another 7,000 to 8,000, maybe 9,000 people attended that one. Robert Mueller was he was a pretty big player. Yep, he was there in spades.
Under Secretary General of the United Nations.
Correct. He helped birth 11 of the 32 UN specialized agencies. Quite the guy. He was a devotee of Teilhard de Chardin.
Yep.
A lot of connections into Lucis Trust and the world servers.
Yep.
That was his domain. I first rubbed shoulders with him back in, got to think, 1997 at the Global Citizens 2000 Youth Congress. And there he talked about how we were all children of the divine, that we were not children of Canada, but we were really living cosmic units, and that we were basically just, we were going to birth the divinity of the universe, this kind of thinking. So there's
Carl,
there's a lot of these intersections, and boy, people don't realize just how important this stuff is because of the influence of it.
Oh, very much so. It would have kept me going because I was raised, in the faith, and thought of myself as a Christian. And after my father had passed away, I kind of fell away and got into conspiracy. Both my parents were deceased, and became a Gnostic New Ager, for a while. And if I would have known, first of all, I would have known my early church history. And if I would have known, the extent of, because when you get trapped in that conspiracy mindset thinking, you thinking, oh, there are a lot of New Agers, and I know, Carl, you go out and you mingle with them and you preach the gospel to them, and I understand that there are many of them that just think they're doing good, but they're not.
Right. Exactly. Good intentions.
It was the same for me. And so, a question I have to everything you just mentioned is something that I have not been able to figure out, and I've looked and I've looked and I've looked, is for theosophy for Alice Bailey, which I know it would be before her birth, or Blavatsky. Is there any significance to 1825? Because she talks about, and there's no one else I've been able to get it. I've been able to ask this question with someone with the knowledge, wheelhouse you have, is, she talks about, sterilization of hierarchy happening in 2025. And then she talks about the significance of 1825. I can't find it.
I know.
So,
I can't. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I wish I could give John, I wish I could just tell it to you. I don't know it either. It's going to pop
I just
up.
want to make sure I'm not the other person is driving crazy. I can't even figure it out. Me and my research partner S9, we've looked and looked and looked and looked, and we cannot figure it out what they're talking about 1825. So, okay. Okay. Well,
is it the importance in a spiritual matter or something different?
I mean, both. There is a spiritual importance of that date to them, and there's some sort of physical importance to that date of them too, because they say that, Alice Bailey writes it like that's the starting point for the externalization of the hierarchy, but won't come to its full fruition until 2025. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, what's so important about 1825? And I can't figure it out. I mean, we spent hours upon hours trying to figure it out, and I don't know. I don't know. So at least, Carl, at least you've heard of it. I don't know. I don't know what it is. So
yeah,
now I'm interested. I'll figure it out for you, John. Don't you worry, buddy.
We'll have to start some kind of internet meme.
I appreciate
1825.
It. Yes,
see what kind of thing that judges up.
For either one of you. So what is the relationship between David Spangler and Robert Mueller? Do you know? Because I know that David Spangler was the director of the Planetary Initiative of the United Nations, and he was a theosophist as well.
And he headed up the Findhorn Society, the Findhorn community.
Oh, what's that?
Oh, okay. John, have you heard of Findhorn? No,
I've not.
All right. So Findhorn. Oh, now I got to put my thinking cap on again. Believe it started in the late 50s, early 60s. Findhorn is a village in northern Scotland, more precise on the northeast side of Scotland, up against the Black Sea. Or pardon me, the North Sea. I don't know why I said the Black Sea. We're talking about some black subjects up against the North Sea, and it started off with a couple who just started planting some gardens. And this is salty, rocky soil. It's a cold climate, but they were conversing with spirits. And finally, all of a sudden, they were able to produce an incredible garden, like 40-pound heads of cabbages, great big carrots, all kinds of crazy stuff. And word quickly spread, and they gathered to themselves other fellow New Age travelers, and it didn't take long, and they had their own community. And it has been a model community working with UNESCO, working with the United Nations ever since. David Spangler was in charge of the Findhorn community for quite a long time. He wrote a number of books through the under the Findhorn publishing title. And Spangler and Findhorn are completely interlocked. So Crombie was one of the elders of Findhorn, and he talks a lot about how Pan would do a would walk alongside and then enter into Cromley as he was walking through the gardens. And to this day, I mean, you can just type in Findhorn community and check out their workshops and their all kinds of stuff. It's one of the world's kind of an epicenter for world change workshops, lectures, experiences, bridging both the New Age, the occult, the deep green aspect, and the international community, specifically the United Nations.
Well, that puts his famous quote in a bit of a more broader perspective, because one of his famous quotes was that nobody would enter the New World Order, nobody would enter the New Age unless he or she took a Luciferian initiation.
Right. That book actually was published by Findhorn.
Oh, wow. Yeah. There we go. Learn something new today. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think that too many people realize how big of an influence the occult has on world organizations such as the United Nations and the World Economic Forum and big organizations like that, and how that interconnects to the interfaith movement. Because, as you stated, the first parliament that you were talking about was started by a theosophist, right? And he's trying to promote all this ecumenicalism. And like you said earlier, you know, they made a lot of groundwork, and I think that their plans are definitely looking more about future fulfillment, you know, because it takes time, just like the Freemasons, you know what I mean? Like, they know they're not going to just get a new world order tomorrow. They've been working on this for a long, long time. And it would, go on.
Yeah, actually, the first parliament, like Charles Bonney, the guy that put the first parliament together, he wasn't actually a theosophist. He invited the Theosophical Society to come in. But I'm glad you brought this up, though, Jeremy, where his background lies. He was a Swedenborg. He firmly believed that what he was going to be doing was helping to usher in the Swedenborg vision of all religions coming together, working together, that everybody could become kind of God in their own way, and that we would bring in a utopian Swedenborg vision. He was very much about that. This was really a Swedenborg kind of expression of what the new world would look like. And again, there's another fellow that few people know who you're talking about when you're talking about Swedenborg and his influence. But the mystic Swedenborg really kind of laid out what would eventually become things like the New Thought movement. It played a big role in Spiritism, his philosophies and his thinking. So and Theosophy as well. There was a lot of overlap with Swedenborg and theosophical concepts.
When you were mentioning Chicago, I would assume Guy and Judy Ballard should ring a bell with the I Am cult in that general area, pushing the same stuff that you were just mentioning beforehand, correct?
Stuff. Yep. You know, it's interesting. You've got hundreds of different organizations and movements and groups, but they're all preaching in essence the same Genesis 3 scenario, that the creation can become the same as the creator. Just transcend, and you can transform. You can become I Am. You can become God.
It's crazy to think that because when we think back of like the 1930s and 40s or even beforehand, we like to think that, like, you know, our grandparents and our great grandparents, and some of them were godly people, but there was a storm of theosophy that hit America around that time that was spreading like wildfire.
Right.
Wildfire.
Yeah, something really interesting happened in the U.S. starting in roughly the 1850s.
Yeah,
and so much of it came out of northern New York, the burned over district. But out of that came Spiritism, Mormons, all kinds of quasi-Christian groups and movements and experiences. And the 1800s, of course, that's the height of modernity. That's hardcore materialism and science. and socialism and Marxism. It was the age of human reason and human intellect, the ascendancy of humanistic thinking. That's where we really see, that all coming into vogue. You don't think of the 1800s as being a time of deep spiritual turmoil, but along with modernity came this incredible spiritual upheaval. This search for, kind of trying to find a spiritual answer to how modernity, I guess, was hollowing out. The very idea of the soul was disappearing under modernity.
So people end up grasp to whatever they could grasp to, right? So if it was, mesmerism, spiritualism, they would just grasp to it, and that's exactly what happened. And a lot of people don't even know that.
And
a lot of people don't know how.
So much of it, John, was experiential, wasn't it?
Yeah, very much so. Yes, instead of actually, and no, I don't believe the gifts of the spirit are dead. But I would argue that you can't take them to their full extreme, right? And so, people were you see it even within Christian churches now with the New Apostolic Reformation, or kind of like your charismatic churches where they take it to the extreme, right? All your revivals and stuff like that. It's just and again, it's what Alice Bailey Wright what they would do. They would take the mysticism and put a Christian veneer on it, and it's exactly what happened. Exactly what happened.
Right. And the influence of she also stated that she would use the Freemasons to accomplish that goal.
Right. Interestingly, at the 2023 Parliament of World Religions in Chicago again, and I've been to my first one I attended was 2015 in Salt Lake City, about 10,000 religious leaders. The Mormons opened it all up. It was interesting because we weren't quite sure how the Mormon community was going to interact within the interfaith community, but they did in a big way, and they really did again back last year in Chicago. And then the next one I attended was 2018 in Toronto, and then 2021 they did a virtual because of COVID, and I give them credit. They built a really incredible virtual platform. It worked really, really well. And then last year, 2023, they returned to Chicago, did it once more. They're looking to do these every 2 to 3 years now. And in many respects, what it does is it empowers the faith leaders of the world to step up and say, we are now the global statesmen. We will be pushing the UN Sustainable Development Goals. That is what they push. We have workshops on climate change. My goodness, I was in a workshop with Karina Gore. But so you've got all this stuff happening, but it's interesting to see how this is kind of the new age dream of all religions can come together. You can keep your diversity. Can keep your diversity, but as long as the agenda and the narrative is the same.
What about go ahead, Jeremy. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that we see the Pope doing that right now. Like, I mean, he's just one of many, but he's obviously a big enough figure so that people can relate to. He's been pushing this ecumenical agenda, this global climate change agenda. He's spoken at the World Economic Forum. He's really been promoting all this stuff. And it seems to me like all these quote unquote religious leaders lean hardcore to leftist ideology. Would you agree with that?
Oh, it's very hardcore left.
It's crazy.
We're told repeatedly at these events that, and this, I'm not stretching this at all. When I hear them talk repeatedly that free market capitalism is the world's greatest threat, things like that, you hear that a lot. An interesting observation is the language within the interfaith movement, specifically at the Parliament, over the last number of years. So I've been going to interfaith events. My very first one happened in 1999. It was a meeting between the World Federalists and United Religions Initiative, both trying to work together to create kind of a United Nations of religions. But the language back then was, we as Christians, conservative Christians, we were fundamentalists. Okay, we can live with that. We can have a conversation around what that might mean. And then it changed. We became exclusivists. All right. We still have some ground to work with. And then we became extremists. At the 2018 Parliament, the language had changed. We were now all supremacists. That was the big term that was thrown around a lot. And then last year's Parliament, and I'm not kidding, this was daily. And every day, all the time. Christians were now placed within the category of we were authoritarians and we were supporting despots. And primarily we were supporting Trump. And Trump is, we were told repeatedly, the next thing to Antichrist and on and on. And I'm, this is the crazy thing. As a Canadian, I can't vote in your country. I got enough problems in my own country.
Right.
But it's interesting to watch this global narrative play out, and it becomes all of a sudden a domestic battlefield as well between different political stripes. And so whatever, but it was interesting to watch all this play out and how this kind of frames things.
Now, John, I know you have a question, so you can go ahead and or a comment. You can go ahead and speak, and then I'll ask mine.
Yeah, Carl, is there anything you could tell me through your research about the Gold Lake meetings of Barbara Marx Hubbard with the evangelical Christians? I know that Constance Cumby covered a lot, and I myself too have been digging in and been digging up stuff as well too at the Gold Lake meetings, and how you had the leader of the family in the fellowship, Douglas Coe, being a figurehead of the Gold Lake meetings when they kind of had some born again Christians were there. Some I think were Christians in quotation marks and name only, meeting with the New Agers, and someone like Art Lindsay, saying the reason why he wouldn't give all the information about the group primarily is he was waiting for Barbara Marx Hubbard to come to Jesus, to become born again. But the thing is well, Barbara Marx Hubbard's dead, and I reached out to her, and I was like, "Hey, like it never happened, man. Like you were outing New Agers supposedly with the Spiritual Counterfeits Project. It's time. Like we need to expose this because it is growing at rates that is not been seen before that I know of, and nothing, crickets.
Really, didn't give you any response.
None at all. Not a single one.
Wow.
So any insight that you can give me is something that
Probably
I've been
not.
researching?
Yeah, probably
Okay.
nothing more than what you already have, John. You're probably ahead of me on the curve on that one.
Okay, because that's something that had been wondering about, trying to find as much. I've actually found, because I did a lot of research into Institute of Noetic Sciences.
Oh yeah, yes.
The who was sorry, I'm having a little bit of brain fog. You had, who was the so-called Christian that was working with the Institute of Noetic Sciences? You might be able to remember his name. And I really
You're talking
found
about Harmon,
Kate.
are you?
No, not
No.
Harmon. I'd have to find the guy's name for it. I'll probably have to come back with it. But anyway, he was giving talks at these New Age conferences he had on the power of prayer, but it was a Christian prayer. Because he had helped found the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which puts forth a lot of New Age science so falsely called mysticism.
Right.
Right. And so okay, now I remember who it is. Paul Nathaniel Temple Jr. Okay.
Right. Okay. Yep.
That
Yep.
was who it was.
Yep.
So he was a major financier. He was also a financier, if I remember correctly, for the family and the fellowship as well too.
Right.
So that it connects all that together. But he was pushing a lot of this kind of New Age noetic thinking and trying to push it on to the Christians, born again believers. So I didn't know if that's something that you had came across as well too. If you were knowledgeable about the Institute of Noetic Sciences, Edgar Mitchell being a founder, and
That's right.
it was funded by the Templeton Fund as well too.
That's right. In
with
fact,
John Templeton.
because it was because of Mitchell's experiences in space that he received his mystic vision of basically it was a worldview transformation.
Mhm.
That's what he ended up having.
Yeah, very much so. Yes. So I just didn't know
Yeah.
if you had anything to the Institute of Noetic Sciences or anything,
No,
outside of that.
yeah, I mean, one of the things I find very interesting with the Institute of Noetic Sciences is the interplay between them and Esalen.
Yeah.
There was a lot of carryover between those two, tremendous amount, and then the role of Esalen in shaping and changing, especially your country, in terms of its spiritual direction. I can't think of too many institutions that have changed the shape of America's religious thinking than what Esalen has done.
Yes, I definitely would agree with that. And then
Yep.
pseudo-noetic sciences is still very big
Oh,
today
they're
in the
very big.
conspiracy cultures.
Yep.
I know that I'm trying to think of his. There's a Paul Gober. I think no, Mark Gober. Mark Gober, who's very high up in ions, is going around to a lot of the truther conferences and speaking, kind of Great Awakening, regurgitating Great Awakening narratives, at numerous conspiracy conferences, including the Reawaken America tour, which was put forth by Theosophical Michael Flynn. And so, I mean, it's interesting to see kind of because I knew about noetic sciences. I guess one last thing, and I know Jeremy wants to ask something. I knew about the noetic sciences when I read Dan Brown's
Okay.
book. I was still a Gnostic at the time, and that's when I had figured that out. About that's when I heard about them, right? But the Freemasons and the Lost Symbol, and the pseudo-noetic sciences, they were the good guys. They were good guys in that book. All right. And so, I mean, that's telling you all you need to know about Dan Brown right there. All right. But I mean, other than pushing, Mary Magdalene worship and kind of Gnosticism and the Holy Grail and the Da Vinci Code. But it's interesting, just to see that, being pushed and everything. And I guess one last thing I'll say about the Institute of Noetic Sciences about ions is that Paul Nathaniel Temple, it was either him or John Templeton. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, it was John Templeton. But Sir John Templeton Fund. He was at one time president of the Council for National Policy. So that's how, and the Templeton Funds funded many libertarian causes like the Cato Institute and Atlas Group. And I remember watching McLaughlin Group with my grandfather growing up, and it would say, funded by the Templeton Group. So the Templeton Group's funding all this libertarian conservative, think tanks, but then funding a new age pseudoscience think tank too that also pushes, learn your psi genes through your 23andMe DNA and take all the psychedelics you want. That's not going to have any issue. I mean, it's like, so now we have, kind of like Christians and conservatives merging with New Agers. If you tell the
Yep.
average person this, they're like, what are you talking about?
No, I know what you're
But it's
saying.
all there. It's all there.
Absolutely, John. It is all there. No, I get that. Totally get that. When you're talking about the Institute, do you know if there was, what kind of connection there was? Because there would have been a connection, but because with Global Family, Esalen, and maybe you have a little bit more knowledge than I do on this. This is something I've really worked at for quite a while. Was the Center for Soviet American Dialogue and the Esalen's Soviet exchange program that they had, because there was this incredible interplay that took place. It was the whole idea of track 2 diplomacy comes out of Esalen. It comes out of this whole milieu, and Esalen ended up becoming the kind of the guide or the leader for Yeltsin when he came to the U.S. for the first time. I know the Council on Foreign Relations, I think Brookings and a few others were all trying to get the bid to more or less hold Yeltsin's hand when he came traipsing across America. But it was Esalen that got it. And then Esalen was dovetailing. I mean, it is an incredible, crazy connection between Hubbard and Global Family. And
very much so, yeah.
They're hosting conferences between Soviet mystics and diplomats with American diplomats and American mystics. You have Christians in the mix. You got this crazy mashup, and this is all setting the stage, really, in many respects, for a change, not just a religious change, but a geopolitical change with the end of the Cold War, where Gorbachev himself basically admitted that they had wiretapped Esalen and were getting their ideas out of Esalen for perestroika and glasnost.
Yeah. I mean, Gorbachev was a major New Age believer who pushed his own foundations. And we know through the Center for Soviet American International Dialogue, it was Rama Vernon that leaked a lot of the documents for it. Just because she was trying to say, look what we did, look how nice this is. And I mean, you had Robert Mueller there, you had Douglas Coe, the family and the fellowship being there. You had Barbara Marx Hubbard being there. You had Ted Turner being there as well. You had Paul Nathaniel Temple Jr. being there as well. You had Buckminster Fuller, who was really good friends with Barbara Marx Hubbard. And
Right.
they pushed a lot of each other's thoughts. He was there too as well. So yeah, I mean, I've done shows on the Center for International Dialogue, the Soviet American Dialogue. I've done shows on them, and
Awesome. I'll have to check that out, John.
it's crazy when you look into it. It's like, I found where they came to America one time. The Soviets did, and there was a Center for Soviet American Dialogue meeting that was after the one in Washington D.C. It was the second one or the third one. I can't remember. And they had a choir there. Like out of all this new age stuff, they had an African American choir there to sing gospel songs. And they were like, "Oh, look how great this is." And I'm like, "What is going on?"
It,
But
yeah.
it's crazy.
Well, and it really that whole project, that whole program was this bizarre, but at the same time interesting blend. And this is
Hmm.
a crazy one to pick apart. A blend between religion and spirituality, even Christianity, with hardcore diplomacy and track to diplomacy, and you've got exchanges of diplomats. You've got many respects. It's almost like a backdoor conduit for GRU and CIA operations. It's just
Hmm.
there's some crazy stuff that happened there, like really super crazy. I mean, when you mentioned Vernon, I mean, Rama Vernon was, I mean, she was the co-founder of Yoga Journal.
Yep.
Um, it,
It's
you could
crazy to think.
have a whole series, John. You could have a whole crazy mini series of programs just peeling that one apart.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's a whole show, and I know that Jeremy wants to get in, but I've covered a lot about how. Well, I guess one last thing. Patch Adams was a member of the Finders, okay, and he was a major part of. He set up clowning for therapeutic healing in the Soviet Union in the early '80s, and he was there giving a speech with Barbara Marx Hubbard and Tina others, a world peace event at the Soviet American Dialogue, the first conference. And it's like, what is you really all can. You mentioned Willis Harman, Noetic
Mm-hmm.
Science, right? So
Mm-hmm. Yes.
he was there as well. Barbara Marx Hubbard too. He was there, giving a conference with her together. I've done so many shows with Barbara Marx Hubbard. I don't even know where to begin. She's part of my finder's book because Marion Petty helped found the World Future Society with
Right.
her. But it's just the connections between these people, it never ends. You just constantly just dig it up. It's
Right.
crazy. It's crazy.
Right. And then to see how deeply it set the tone for the flip over of the Soviet Union into Russia.
Yeah.
How it changes not just the spiritual world, it changes the geopolitical world. There's this a very evident correlation. And I mean, you mentioned earlier Mikhail Gorbachev as a new ager. Coming into the Politburo, he's a hardcore atheist. He's a hardcore Marxist communist coming into the Politburo, and when he's out, when he's finally he's the last leader of the Soviet Union, he's there as a kind of a green quasi mystic.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a
Very much
change!
so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know was never ever to find out if he was a member of the World Future Society or not. Because we know, Maury Strong was,
yep.
Willis Harman was, Barbara Marcus Hubbard was, but I could never figure out if Gorbachev was.
I don't think he
Um,
was. No,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, I don't think he was. Gorbachev was playing in a different league.
Yeah.
And in many respects, I look at, let's say, even guys like Maurice Strong. Well, I see the work that he was doing. Again, it's a different league than the World Future Society. He's in there with the World Future Society. There's no question. He's a member. He's involved, but he's also playing at roles that are even. I mean, from the geopolitical perspective, he was playing huge roles. He was one of the most important, and certainly one of the most globally connected men in the 1990s. Actually, the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. He was
Hmm.
Mr. International.
Hmm.
And by the way,
Yes.
Maurice Strong comes from my province, Manitoba.
Yeah, I've heard you say that in interviews.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and
He
he was
just
the boogeyman before Klaus Schwab was, and before who's George Soros. Alex
right.
Jones used to talk Maury Strong all the time. So
Well, the guy had. I mean, he was a power player.
he was.
He basically his index cards of connections was a who's who for the world. Um, Back in 19, when was it? I think 1999, I was at a World Federalist event in Dallas, and Maurice Strong was one of the speakers. I am spending a day with him, just hanging out together because we ended up having a conversation. My wife grew up only a few miles away from where he grew up. And so we had this really kind of cool little, small town Manitoba connection. And he was the one who popped into my ear what they were trying to accomplish, him and Ted Turner, for the Millennium Summit of World Religious Leaders.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy was incredibly connected.
Well, I know that we're limited on time here. You got about 15 minutes, I think. But
Yes. Yep.
before you go, I know that you've been to a lot of cultural change movements and things like Burning Man and all these different types of gatherings where interfaith and spirituality are promoted so heavily. Could you just give us a little background about some of that stuff? Because I know you've been to Burning Man a couple times. What is the
Yep.
message that's usually preached there, and how does that connect with the interfaith movement and biblical prophecy?
Okay. Well, I'm looking to go back to my fifth burn. This coming summer. I've been to 4 of them, and then a whackload of the virtual ones because they had a number of virtual platforms during COVID. Again, that were very well done because hey, after all, this is Silicon Valley. That's what
Right.
Burning Man is. Burning Man is Silicon Valley. The two are completely connected and far deeper than people realize. If you're watching this using a Google product, or if you use Google Maps, you're using Burning Man. Google changed the world, and Google was changed by the burn. So that there's the correlation there. In fact, Jeremy, here's something that was kind of interesting this spring, and I put it up on my Facebook feed that I attended the Texas Eclipse Festival, which is a sub-movement within transformational culture. So you have Burning Man as like the mothership of sorts. And by the way, Burning Man is really, everybody thinks of it as just a great big party. Yeah, it's a party. There's no question it's a big party, but it's way, 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 way more. In many respects, you could look at it as Mardi Gras and the World Economic Forum coming together, because that's the level of conversations that you end up having with people from deep inside the cryptocurrency community to the UN Sustainable Development Goals to junior members of the World Economic Forum hosting conversations on the 2030 agenda. All this stuff is happening. It's way more than just a bunch of hippies running around naked in the desert. Everybody thinks that. I don't even see any hippies out there. Hippies can't afford to go. This is not, the image everybody has is completely inaccurate. Yes, it is a raw experience. No question about it. But it's just part of a global phenomenon, a global movement. And so, hey, this spring I was at the Texas Eclipse Festival, which was in many respects a parallel to the Burning Man experience without burning anything. And Texas Eclipse, because it was in a much smaller container, only about 35,000 versus the typical 75 to 80,000 in Burning Man. And because it was centered around the eclipse, you had this interesting correlation between shamans, indigenous spiritual leaders, New Agers, occultists, worshiping and venerating the sun with ceremonies to the sun, literally. And while that's going on, just like a couple hundred yards away, you've got SpaceX and the Dear Moon Project talking about cosmic futurism and why they're going to Mars and human evolution through cosmic futurism, which is cosmism. That's all that is. That's Fedorov's ideas from the 1890s. And then just a few hundred yards away on the other side, you've got some of the leading lights in blockchain, talking about everything from important subjects like privacy to how AI is the next weapon of mass destruction, as AI is now being integrated into things like very cheap 3D printed drones, things like that. Some really freaky stuff that was being discussed that way. And then a few yards on the other direction, you've got like Elon Musk's top neuroscientists talking about brain computer implants. And then a big stage on psychedelic consciousness with Alex Gray doing visionary artwork, and you've got Rick Doblin from Maps and all the other stuff that's happening.
I call him Rick Goblin. I've done so much research into things he said. Wanting to put soldiers in ketamine K-hole sponsored by Peter Thiel and putting them in virtual reality machines. And
John,
they can reset their PTSD and put a gun in their hands and make them go right back out again to fight within an hour or two. It's sick. It's so sick, Carl.
Oh, hey,
so
and I know it, John. I've been in, I don't know, 2 dozen workshops or sessions, panels with Doblin and the Maps crew, maybe more. Because when I'm at the Burn and some of these other events, I want to go and listen. And I've also been to a few psychedelic conferences that were held virtually during the COVID years. Again, there's all this interchange, and it's all the same thing. It's all saying the same thing. It's just there's the neurochemical technologies being wedded to the hardware technology, being wedded to your brain technology, with a physical, almost physical spiritual interlap.
Wow. And just so everybody knows, because I know you met Basil at the last one, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the last Burning Man, yeah.
Actually, crazy. Basil and I couldn't meet. We ended up running circles around each other, never finding each other until after it was done. Then we were able to sit down and have a great conversation.
Yeah, I remember listening to that interview. I was like, oh man. But can you tell everybody what the name of your little camp is? Because I love it, man. It comes straight from the Bible.
Yep. It's based out of Acts 17 when Paul goes to Athens and he sees the monument to the unknown God. And he uses that as leverage to have a conversation about the true God that he is the creator of heavens and earth. That's right there, the distinction with the pagan gods and goddesses who are nothing more than a fraction or fragment of the natural world. No, this God, he is the one who created heaven and earth. He stands apart from it. And Paul goes into the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and he ends up quoting their own philosopher. He quotes from the hymn of Zeus, and he uses this unknown, this monument to the unknown God as that leverage point. And so the name of our camp is the Camp of the Unknown God.
And
we use that as leverage. And people ask, it's Burn. Everybody wants to know, what camp are you part of? Because not everybody, but so many people are part of theme camps. So we're like, yeah, we're with the Camp of the Unknown God. And then that opens up conversations right there. It's not work. It's not difficult.
Carl,
that's amazing.
One quick question, and then definitely plug all your stuff, brother, and everything, because I know you got to go. And I'll keep it really brief. His question is pretty much simply stated. How do you feel about the pushing and rising of Christian futurism, kind of blending in with kind of Christian nationalism? You'll see people like Rod D. Martin, who's a Gold Circle member of the CMP, kind of pushing an increase of technology in Christian times and a blending with Christian nationalism, kind of like conquering the metaverse for Jesus
and transhumanism,
aspect, as well as the earthly kingdoms as well for Jesus, and transhumanism as well too. So what are your brief thoughts on that, if you have any?
Yeah. No, my brief thoughts are quite simple with this, and it's more just a reflection of the approach that I have to take. We're not here to conquer the culture. We can't. We're not here to conquer the culture. We're not here to conquer the politics. We're not here to conquer the technology. We can leverage it, as Paul leveraged it in Athens, to bring about the truth of the real kingdom, instead of trying to create. John, what you were just describing, I think, can be boiled down to this. We see this in the Christian community so much, where we try to build our own kingdom. We're the ones who want to build the kingdom of heaven on earth. That was a social gospel movement. That was the movement from the 1893 Parliament on. We're the ones who birthed the kingdom of God on earth. In many respects, when you were just talking about what you were just talking about, it's like, there's this we just can't seem to let this go. It's like our own Christian version of Babel.
Very wise words. Very wise words.
Yes. Amen. And what I see is all these different layers to this topic, to the interfaith movement, and Burning Man, all the groups that you guys have mentioned. It all is going to culminate, and I'm afraid to say this, but there are Christians that are going to be a part of this as well, that are going to essentially introduce the New World Order, one world religion, which I don't think is what everybody thinks about, thinks it is. You know what I mean? I think it's a culmination of the interfaith movement. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter who you believe in, except if you're Christian, of course.
Right. So,
but they're working on that.
I'll end it off with Swami Vivekananda, back to 1893, and this is what he told the Parliament then. To me, what he said at that point, it still resounds today. He said this, when he was describing the religion of the future, that the religion of the future will, I'm quoting now, will recognize divinity in every man and woman, and whose whole scope, whose whole force will be created in aiding humanity to realize its own true divine nature. Offer such a religion, and all the nations will follow you.
Well said, man.
Doesn't get any more clear than that.
Exactly. It's straightforward. So I know we're running out of time here, and I want to give you the opportunity to tell everybody where they can get your books. Plug anything that you need to plug, brother, because I know that this is your life's work and what God has put on your heart to do for the world. And I hope that this reaches far and wide so that you can be blessed and blessed others like you have been. So go ahead and plug everything that you need to plug, brother.
Well, hey, thank you. If folks want to know more about this work, you can grab a hold of my book, Game of Gods, The Temple of Man and the Age of Reenchantment. You can find that at gameofgods.ca. It's a Canadian website. Or you just go to Amazon. You can look it up online. And then if you want, you can go to forcingchange.org. I used to run a magazine, an online journal for 9 years called Forcing Change, which was examining and documenting the forces of change, the political, philosophical, religious, cultural forces of change. I ended up scrapping the project after 9 years to write my book. And so forcingchange.org is the archive of all of that information. So you can go in, log on, it's free. And just strip the site of everything. Take all the PDFs off it, put it on your computer, put a folder on your computer, dump the whole web page, the whole website on it. That way you have it. And it's a gold mine of information.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I wish we had a couple hours because we could talk to you all day about this stuff. So we'll have to have you on again when you're available.
Yes.
We're going to, whether you like it or not, make you an unofficial co-host of the show about their fruits. So, welcome to the team.
Well, hey, this has been an absolute pleasure. John and Jeremy, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Carl. God bless you.
All right. Take care.